rather interesting discussion this evening, and I know it's going to be challenging for me because I want us to make sure that we're focusing on the right thing. I mean, last time we received a warning from our readings to flee the land of the north and come out from the daughter of Babylon, and we had a brief discussion about Babylon. That's in Zechariah chapter 2, verses 6 through 9, which we'll be reading it together in just a moment. But I know that, you know that when we're reading the prophets and there's a directive given, we have to be careful to that we don't arrogate to ourselves authority or prophetic words that really have nothing to do with us. Although there's definitely a case to be made that as prophecy is very often cyclical, and it just keeps being fulfilled over and over and over and getting bigger and bigger as the ages come towards the close. It makes it almost always applicable in some sense. And so I don't think it's wrong to apply the warnings or the encouragements of a prophet, but we also do need to be mindful of who's the audience, who's the intended audience. But with prophecy, that's a little bit tricky sometimes. We did have a brief discussion about Babylon 2 weeks ago and what it represented. So this evening, we're going to delve a little bit more into that, okay? Because this does need to be fleshed out. We really do need to have a good, clear understanding of the system of Babylon, what it represents, how it impacts our lives. I mean, we all know that the literal system of Babylon, well, the literal city of Babylon has not been in existence since pretty much, a long, long time. That place is a waste and a desolation and has been for, several thousand years. Not several, I apologize, at least a couple thousand years. So the city of Babylon is no more. It hasn't been for a long time. But the Bible continues to talk to us about Babylon. And so we're going to have to parse that out and figure out, what does this mean? What is it telling us? And what do we do with this information? Because you know that I am practical to a fault, that sometimes I'm probably a little too practical. So I know that, I'm always looking for, what do I do with this information? How can I use this information? Is Father talking to me? What am I supposed to do here? So that's the focus that I want to focus on this evening. And so the first thing I want to do is read to you Zechariah 2, 6 through 9. I will do that now and just kind of refamiliarize ourselves with the passage. And it says here, ho, ho. That is not Santa Claus. That literally means, alas, or woe, or ah. Okay, so ho, ho. Flee from the land of the north, declares Yah. For I have released you as the four winds of the heavens, declares Yah. Ho, Zion, escape, you who are living with the daughter of Babylon. For thus says Yah of hosts, after glory he has sent me against the nations which plunder you. For he who touches you touches the apple of his eye. For behold, I will wave my hand over them so that they will be plunder for their slaves. Then you will know that Yah of hosts has sent me. That is our key text here. Now, I want to start by saying I did mention briefly that ho, ho, flee from the land of the north. Ho is akin to woe or alas or ah or oh, like pay attention or I'm. Something makes me think of that prophecy. I don't remember who it was these men who are clutching their guts. Remember where that is? I don't remember where that is, but it's like a lamentation. It says that we are to escape, flee from the land of the north. Now, escape, or that word flee in this text, this is a New American Standard text, that is the Hebrew word nous, which is to flee, escape, take flight. And then, just as an interesting side note, it says, you who are living with the daughter of Babylon. Now, flee from the land of the north. I want to deal with the land of the north first. Does anyone know what the Hebrew word for north is? It's kind of it's saphon. Yeah, that's an interesting word. It means hidden, dark, obscure. That's an interesting, directional compass finder. That's a weird phrase. because I think that it definitely exemplifies what you get a lot of times in the Torah and in the prophets and the writings, talking about weird things and bad things and evil things come from the north country. Always, whatever, you know. Well, you remember that Babylon is not exactly north of Israel. It's kind of up and over, so it's actually east and just a little bit north. But remember that ginormous desert is there just to the east of Israel. Nobody can cross that. And so the armies and the invasions and the people always came directly from the north because they had to go over and down. So Babylon is north and east, and Zephon is dark, hidden, obscure. So although now I think it's certainly possible, because especially if you look at the book of Malachi, and who's the Haggai, the other prophet who is contemporaneous with Zechariah, that he is definitely calling for his chosen remnant, his people. He's making a special call to the people to come back to the land. He's given them a wide open opportunity to experience that blessing. The time of punishment is over. He's extending his blessing. This passage here, I have released you as the four winds of the heavens. If your translation might say something a little bit different, like I have scattered you to the four winds of the heavens, but if you look real carefully at the Hebrew there, it's probably a better translation to say, I have released you from the four winds of the heavens. Not like the four winds of the heavens, I've scattered you everywhere. I am calling you from the four winds of the heavens. I think that's probably a better translation. It makes a lot more sense in the context. And so he's basically throwing open the doors and saying, I am releasing you from your bondage if you want. I have made your captors to have favor upon you so that you can leave. You can leave if you want to, and I'm calling you back to experience the blessings of the land. Now, the question is this a command? Is this a command? It sure sounds like a command. It sounds like a warning more so than a command. And I think most people do take it as a warning. And what's interesting too is that you can see these same words, escape Babylon, they're repeated over and over. They're in Jeremiah, they're in Isaiah, they're in the book of Revelation. They're everywhere. They're all over the place. Okay, so what we have to discover is, what do we mean by escape? And is that literal? And how do we take that here at the end of the age, where Babylon, the city and the country or whatever, doesn't really exist anymore? So I want to deal briefly with just a little bit more about the text of this passage before we dig about in philosophical terms and start to characterize this. When he says in verse 7, escape, that is malat. That is the Hebrew word malat, which means, it's from a root that means slick, like a greased pig. You're trying to catch a greased pig. It's hard to get. So he's literally saying slip away. Literally slip away. Now, the daughter of Babylon, what would you say is the difference between the land of the north and the daughter of Babylon? Do we equate the land of the north with Babylon? Are those synonymous terms? And then what's the difference with the daughter of Babylon? Who is the daughter of Babylon and who is the land of the north? Can we just say that the land of the north is Babylon? Anybody want to comment on that, either in-house or online? I think most commentators agree that the land of the north is most likely referring to Babylon. And what would you say about the daughter of Babylon?
I take it to a spiritual aspect, corruption of Yah's word and coming out.
So you take the daughter of Babylon to be what now? Repeat that.
Syncretization is the fancy word. Blending of Yah's Torah and inserting pagan, inserting anything that shouldn't be added or taken away from.
Totally understood. What would you say is, keep that mic. What would you say is a daughter of Babylon?
You're putting me on the spot.
I am, but I'm just asking. It's okay. You can, if you don't know, throw the mic to someone else.
Okay.
I'm just asking.
Look at what the Catholic Church has done and the Protestant churches. Look at what they've done. So
all right.
I think we can kind of.
So you would say that maybe the Catholic Church and the some of these other religious systems would be Babylon or daughters of Babylon.
Yes.
That's a very popular idea. If you're taking it literally just spiritually, yeah, from the aspect of syncretism. Is that right? Okay. Hand that to Bethany. I don't know if you can reach that. You got it. Yeah, thank you. You're going to hand that to Jerry. Hold on to it for a second, Jerry. I'm going to Tracy. Go ahead, Tracy.
So in Revelation 17, that talks about Babylon being the mother of harlots. And so here we're talking about daughter of harlots. I was trying to pull up the verse really quick, and I can't remember. It's in Jeremiah. But Yahweh speaking to his people in Jerusalem, and he's telling them, you have a harlot's forehead. And so I think we can make a connection there that his people have played the harlot. And then if you go to Ezekiel 16:45, it kind of talks about this. He's talking to his people again, and this is caused Jerusalem to know her abominations. And verse 45 says, you are your mother's daughter who despises her husband and her sons, and you are the sister of your sisters who despise their husbands and their sons. Your mother was a Hittite, your father was an Amorite. So, I mean, I think that what Brent was saying is basically anything that comes out of that mixing is a daughter of Babylon. So if we go back to who the mother is, and who, these people who are supposed to be wearing God's name in their forehead and keeping his ways, they've mixed the ways with the nations, they've mixed the cup, and so then they have played the harlot against God, and then they're giving birth to more children. So I think anybody that is falling under that category could be a daughter of Babylon. That's just a theory.
That's a good insight. Jerry?
I think that any daughter of Babylon would be any religion that spawns from Satan. The occult, you got the occult, you got the cabal, you got all the
spiritual
Baals,
spawn of Satan. Yeah.
When Satan took Christ up to the, I think it was a pinnacle, and he said, look at all the cities out there.
Yeah.
He said, these are mine. I'll give all these to you.
Right. Yeah.
Satan is Babylon, and everybody that worshipped him is a daughter of Babylon.
Sure. No, that's a great insight, Jerry. I appreciate you sharing that. And I would say, Jacqueline, you go ahead, Jacqueline.
I unmuted myself and then muted again. I was thinking, daughters are ones that not only propagate, but also they're the ones typically to raise and bring to fruition. So they're kind of like the ones who bring to culmination the seed that was planted through whatever it is.
Yeah, no, that's a good insight right there for sure. I think I'm going to back up just a little bit because, Hayden, yeah, go ahead.
I think, so normally you got like this foreign nation, there's a bunch of daughters, and then the Israelites will go over there and they'll go, oh, daughters, and they'll take them. So
remind you of that Torah portion with the Moabite women here.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got this evil system, and it produces its offspring, and there are all these little choices you can engage with, and you can take it, and then monkey's paw, you engage in the pleasure, you get the beautiful young woman, but then in return, you're corrupted like Solomon.
Yep.
And then she corrupts all your offspring, and
then you have corrupted offspring, yes, and it's like
purchased
Tracy
and taken an idol from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Good insight. So I think that you're all definitely picking up on the spiritual aspects of Babylon. And I know, and I'll make some comments about that in just a moment. From the perspective of this text, I want to point out that yes, there is very likely a very literal, temporal call to the children of Israel in exile in either Babylon, because we know who was in Babylon. Daniel, Ezekiel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Abednego, Meshach, and Abednego, and those guys. A lot of people went to Babylon. Now Daniel made a transition from Babylon to Medo-Persia, and now we know that it was the Medo-Persian king Cyrus who released the Jews to go back to Jerusalem. So on a literal, personal, foundational, practical level, this probably is a call to people living in Babylon, literally, and people living in the Medo-Persian Empire, because I think it would be fine to say that the Medo-Persian Empire is a daughter of Babylon. In fact, I'm going to make the case to you here in a couple of minutes that all of the world's kingdoms, empires, and systems are all Babylonian. It doesn't matter which one you're talking about. So those are all daughters of Babylon. Michael, you got a microphone?
Yeah. It's funny you were saying that. I was just reading in Revelation, and it's talking about how the kings, let's see here. This is in the Old English, but with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication.
Yeah.
So, and then, if you go and look at what is the wine of her fornication, you can see what sorts of corruption these kings are committing.
And that's a delightful observation, and we're going to dig into that a little bit more, because I think because we're going to have to take this spiritually. And I'll tell you why. There's two reasons why we're going to have to take this spiritually. And we'll discuss those in a minute. But we really need to know, if we do take this spiritually, what do we do with the information? How do we come out of her, my people? What does that mean? And it's nothing new. When we discuss it, you'll go, well, yeah, duh. It's there it is. It's nothing new under the sun. So let me just point out a couple of things to you, okay, concerning Babylon. We all have a pretty clear idea of what Babylon is, and we don't need to go too far down that rabbit hole, because you can do a massive study of the Babylonian system and how it's infecting everything today, and you can do Hebrew word studies. We're going to touch on that briefly. Why? Because I can already tell from the comments online and the comments in-house, you guys already know this. I don't need to preach to the choir, right? You guys probably know more about this than I do. I want to get down to brass tacks. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say, we don't want to just go down the rabbit hole of discussing Babylon. It is interesting. It's more fun. It's mysterious. It's titillating, but it's often fruitless if you don't really know what you're doing with that information. But understanding how Babylon manifests today is really important, and I definitely want to deal with that. Of primary importance is how we deal with it. And we're being advised to escape it, and we need to determine, does that, because some people today think that they need to escape physically, and some people think they just need to escape spiritually. And so we want to maybe hash that out a little bit. That's a difficult subject for sure. So what are we focusing on, deliberately? How do we escape Babylon? Because I want to. I don't know about you, but I would like to escape the clutches of the Babylonian system. So let's spend a couple of minutes just discussing the characterization of Babylon. What is Babylon? What are its characteristics? Okay, so Babylon could be considered the kingdom of the adversary. You want to call that, the beast system, the whore, the scarlet whore, whatever you want to call it. It's the system of the beast. It's the system of the anti-Messiah. It's the system of the devil. Who knows? Doesn't matter what you call it. Now, Babel, I think I have this to share with you on the screen. What did I do? I did something goofy. Sorry. Hold on just a sec. Okay. Yes. So you can probably see that it says Babel, or Bavel, however you want to pronounce the B or the V, is literally Babylon. And it is from the root balal, which means to mix, mingle, confuse, or confound. Now, you first see this idea of Babel and mixing and confusion coming up in Genesis 8. And I will just show you a brief section here. This is quite interesting, and I think this ultimately characterizes the Babylonian system in a lot of ways. Okay, so in Genesis 11:1, it says, "Now all the earth used the same language and the same words. And it came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and fire them thoroughly. And they used brick for stone, and they used tar or bitumen for mortar. And they said, come, let's build ourselves a city, a tower whose top will reach into heaven. Fascinating things to be delved into there. And let's make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered abroad over the face of all the earth. Now Yah came down to see this city and the tower which the men had built. And Yah said, behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they have started to do. And now nothing which they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So Yah scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore it was named Babel, because there Yah confused the language of all the earth, and from there Yah scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Now, fascinating discussion about Babel here. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with this passage, and it's quite interesting. You see that this city is ultimately established by who? Who was the founder? That's Nimrod. Okay, we know all about Nimrod. They had man-made bricks. Okay, there's so many different interesting symbols in this passage about making a name for yourself and maybe supplanting by the head Rosh reaching up into the heavens. Fascinating ideas, and I know you guys have probably seen 100 YouTube videos about breaking this down every which way from Sunday. Just going to glance right over that. Fair enough? Okay. Now, what I'd like to show you briefly is just to think about the different incarnations of Babylon and how the people of Yah have interacted with Babylon over their various exiles. I think that is really instructive. Okay, let's think about that. We see, I'm going to say, another incarnation of Babylon, the Babylonian system, in Genesis 39 through 47, that whole end section where Joseph is in Egypt. That's another Babylonian system. It's a strange mixing, it's a mingling, it's a homogenization of religious syncretism. It is a Babylonian system. And there we see that Joseph is exiled to Egypt. They were always dealing with God's people being exiled into a foreign land and having to deal with a foreign power that is some manifestation of Babylon. Now, Joseph is exiled there. Interesting that he faithfully and diligently serves the Egyptians, doesn't he? He becomes second in command. And we see that happening quite a bit with these people that Yah exiles into these Babylonian systems, that they somehow flourish and rise and even further populate and become like in control. I was talking with someone just the other day about doing social work, because this person was a social worker. And they were like, yeah, it would be horrible to work for the CPS. Yes, we all know that CPS is a horrible Babylonian system. But what would it be like if there was a woman of Yah working at CPS, interacting with these families? Do you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing? Is she being infected and infested with Babylon? She doesn't have to be. She can keep herself pure and separate. She might have to deal with some garbage in that system, but think of the impact she could have on the lives of families if she was a godly woman dealing with CPS. Okay? Same thing with Joseph. Same thing with Daniel and Meshach and Abednego. It's just Esther and Mordecai. It's everywhere. So interesting to note a couple of things here. Joseph faithfully serves the Babylonians. He is sexually tempted by Potiphar's wife. You have sexual temptation with the Babylonian system. He resists that. In the end of the story, it's interesting that the family, the remnant, is saved at the end of that story. Joseph and all of his brothers together in the land of Egypt and the land of Goshen, protected. But what happens to the whole system? They're all enslaved. Do you remember the dream that Pharaoh had of 7 years of famine, or 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine? And it's the government that stores up all that wealth and grain, and then the people are selling themselves. They're selling their land. They're selling their cattle. They're selling their own bodies just to have something to eat. And at the end of that 14 years, Pharaoh owns everything. All of the people are slaves. Who are the people left over who are not slaves? It's Yah's people and the priests of the Babylonian system. Interesting, isn't it? Now, you can further develop that by going to Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel and his friends faithfully serve the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. Babylon seeks to aggrandize itself by, Nebuchadnezzar has this dream about this head of gold and all this stuff, and he decides, well, I'll just make the whole thing of gold. That's me, baby. And that does not turn out well for him. He goes mad. He becomes like a beast. That's also prophetic and interesting. Then he tries to enforce conformity of worship. This happens with both the Babylonian and the Persian system. Okay, whenever you hear the sound of the flute and the lyre and the harp and blah, 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 you will bow down to this statue and you know what? They say, sorry, we can't do that. Are you starting to see a coming out of Babylon? This is what we're going to hit on that a little bit more. They try to enforce conformity of worship. They try to implement idolatry. Okay, and they had to resist that at the pain of death. So consider that. Also interesting to note that when they first got there, they were with the king's chamberlain, and he was saying, "Here's your food, here's your drink," and they said, "I don't think we're going to eat that. I don't think we're going to eat that." So listen here. This is kind of interesting, don't you think? We have sexual immorality temptations. We have idolatry and worship temptations. And we have food temptations. Where have we heard that before? Acts chapter 15. Isn't that interesting? So, the Babylonian system is trying to enforce and press upon the people the same things that Yah gave to James to give to the Gentiles who were turning away from paganism and grafting themselves into Israel. Fascinating, isn't it? So then what's also interesting, and this happens repeatedly, persecution comes up and attempts are made to destroy the remnant. Okay? That's just with Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar in the land of Babylon. This is the literal city of Babylon. You can develop this further into Persia. You got Hadassah or Esther and Mordecai faithfully serving the Persians. Mordecai refuses to bow down, and Haman seeks to destroy him. Esther, and this is interesting, and I'm just going to make a note to you here because I didn't frankly have time to dig into all these passages to be able to put them up on the screen for you, but I'd like you to make a note to read Esther chapter 3, verses 7 and 8, where Haman is basically getting ready to publish a law saying, "O king, there is a people within your kingdom who do not obey your laws. They have their own way of doing things, and it's my suggestion that we destroy them." Okay? Now, so this is happening again where they're being persecuted and attempts are being made to destroy Yah's remnant within Babylon. Now, what are some interesting parallels that you see in all of these manifestations of the Babylonian system? What characteristics are you seeing here? Just broad strokes. Broad strokes. We know that it's a system that's created by mixing and confusion, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I want to delve a little bit deeper into that. But what is characterizing Yah's faithful remnant with their interaction with Babylon? What would you say? Anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns about how would you characterize this? Did I characterize it well for you?
It's always hatred for Yah and his people. So anybody who stands on Yah's law and speaks with prophetic, they're targeted.
Yeah. So Brett, you probably didn't hear Brett. Anyone who's standing faithful with Yah is going to be targeted. That is very much true. What else do you see? Something else that was like pretty consistent through all of these stories of different iterations of the Babylonian system. One thing that was interesting, Angela, Hayden, would you hand your mother a microphone, please?
It seemed like they were living in it and operating pretty successfully with some really clear limitations as to what they would and wouldn't participate in. It's almost like I don't know, like the Acts 15 list, like you said, where it seemed like they were getting along really well with those leaders.
Yes,
But
like
then
sometimes they do.
but then there was a line,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't go past that.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting, Hayden, take that, is the faithful servants of Yah go into exile willingly. Why would they go willingly? Read Daniel chapter 9, Nehemiah chapter 9. They recognize that they are guilty, they have shame of face, they deserve to be in exile. Do you deserve to be in exile? I do. I have to admit it. I have to say, yep, I'm not worthy of not being in exile. I have to recognize I'm right where Yah wants me to be. Now, since I have nowhere to go, and we'll talk about that in a moment, what do I have to do? I have to serve faithfully. You notice that every one of these people, when they were in exile, they served the people around them faithfully. Now, there's a difference between serving Babylon and serving the people of Babylon. Now, these guys, though, they seem to be serving the system. I mean, they're serving directly in high administrative positions in the government systems of Babylon. But then you go right back to what I said a moment ago about CPS. There are lights shining in the midst of a perverse and dark system. You can see that, not very often, but you can see it a little bit if you look across the political landscape, periodically. You'll see one little twinkling light of somebody who's honest and seems to have some morality and some ethics. It's kind of rare in the system these days, and those guys stand out like a light. Now, that is probably not going to turn out well for them pretty soon. There's a real possibility that the system becomes so corrupted that those people become targets. You definitely may not want to be in a position like that, when the system turns full dark and those lights need to be snuffed out, because you know that when you're a cockroach and you want to hide in the darkness, you don't want a light around you, right? Lou, would you? Anyway. No, not anyway. You just hold on there, buddy. I got to get you a microphone or nobody's going to hear you.
Well, they may not want Well, when they were wanting to leave and they were asking Pharaoh to let them go, let's let them go. And what were they doing then?
They were slaves.
Yeah. They were slaves, and they were making what?
Bricks.
Bricks.
Yep.
And when they refused to make bricks, what happened?
They got beat down. They got crushed.
Beat. They had to look for their own straw and everything. And that's just like us sometimes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We forget.
Yes, it is.
And then comes the punishment.
That's right. That's right. You can live at peace in the Babylonian system for some time.
Yeah.
But if you refuse to cross certain lines, you make yourself a target.
Right.
Now, you don't need to deliberately make yourself a target, and there are lots of people who do that. You know what I'm saying? I've seen a lot of foolishness in Christianity where people are out, getting really involved in that Babylonian system and is like just saying, here I am, come and get me. I don't know that I'd do that. I think we ought to have a little more wisdom than that, but that's just my personal opinion, and that's my personal calling. Perhaps Father does call people to do different things. You might be somebody like John the Baptist who is called by Father to go and confront the leadership of Babylon. Well, if that is you, may Yah bless you and strengthen you and encourage you, because you're going to be killed. But you know what? You got to expect that. He already told you it was going to happen. There are several passages. There are parallel passages in the book of Revelation and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Isaiah. To those who were going to death, to death. To those to the sword, the sword. To those who are imprisoned, imprisonment. If he's called you to that, don't run from it. You'd be like doing pulling a Jonah. You don't want to be doing that. So the point I guess I would make here is that these guys are being tested. They are faithfully serving to the ability that they can, but they are going to be challenged in those three areas: sexual immorality, idolatry, and surprisingly, food. It's the weirdest thing. We tend to not think food is that big of a deal. I don't know about you, but have you ever tried to diet? You ever tried to stop eating? You ever tried to stop eating pork? That's kind of a big deal. And you ever stop trying to worship the way the beast system worships? With the moving away from the system's holy days, the system's Sabbath day, the system's different ways of religious expression. I don't talk about that very often because I'm preaching to the choir, but those are the things that separate you. And so when somebody, and I guess that this is what I would say, how do you come out of Babylon? It's real simple. It's not that complex. Is our system rife with sexual immorality? It's everywhere. Sexual immorality is everywhere. To literally keep yourself pure from sexual immorality, whether that's pornography and you know what? And you don't even have to go to like real pornography. Everything's pornographic. Maybe you can just be driving down the street and look up and see some what used to be considered soft-core porn just posted right on the billboard as you're driving down the street. Okay? You might be driving by a gentleman's club, a billboard selling some kind of vodka or tequila or something. There's sexual immorality and perversion everywhere. And it has devolved, as you very well know, into confusion that has reached to new heights that I don't think the earth has ever seen before. The earth has never seen the heights of sexual immorality, perversion, and confusion to where we don't even know what a woman is. We don't even know what a man is. We can't even keep these things straight in our minds. And men can be pregnant and can lactate and have their period, and my goodness. So there's some real strong sexual perversion in the system. You've got to stay clear of that to the best of your ability, period. And that's really hard. That's really hard. Worshiping the way they worship. I don't have to tell you, you are in a vast minority of people. There are very few people who worship like you do on this planet. Very few. Who are just saying, I want to read the Bible and I want to try and do what it says, period. I don't need you to tell me what it says. I don't need to listen to your instructions about how it should, now you don't need to be foolish. You need to listen to good instruction, but you can read it for yourself. I heard somebody recently who has been in church for most of his life, and he's like 55 years old. He's like, I just decided I would read the Bible. He's like, I wasn't going to a Bible study. I wasn't going to sit down with my pastor. I was just going to read it.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, he was shocked. He had been doing it for a couple of months now, and he was like, I'm just shocked. I'm shocked at what I'm reading in here. And I'm talking to my pastor every once in a while after I've been reading for a while. He's like, how come he never told us any of this stuff? Now, he was not talking about Hebrew root stuff or being, coming to the saying the name correctly or worshiping in the correct holy days. He was just coming to grips with things that he had no idea were even in there. Just because they just don't read it very often. And I was just talking with Jason in here this evening. He was having a conversation with a former pastor friend. It's like, Paul said. It's like, really? Because Paul didn't say that. I don't know what you're talking about. So it's real easy to get confused in this system. And I think that in order to come out of Babylon, we need one thing: His Word and His Spirit inside of us that helps us to understand that Word. It's quite simple. So, and I think it needs to be simple because a child should be able to do it. You don't need to be a theologian. You don't have to read Hebrew. You don't have to study all of the roots of Hebrew letters and everything. That's delightful, and you should certainly seek to do that. Getting a deeper understanding is delightful, but you just pick up a decent translation of the Bible and you'd be amazed at the things you can see. So, getting your own taste at the pure waters upstream of all the filth is a great way to come out of Babylon. And you guys have already done that. Now, the thing that I want to challenge and think about is a couple of things, okay? Here's what I would say. I talked before when we were looking at the early parts of Zechariah chapter 1, where I showed that one slide where it was like the kingdom of Yah and the kingdom of Babylon, or the kingdom of the adversary, and it showed the Tower of Babel. You remember that slide? So there is a battle of these two kingdoms going on. It has been since the garden. Okay, you can see right at the beginning that Father is saying He created the heavens and the earth, and He separated. He did not mix. He did not mix heaven and earth. He did not mix land and sea. He did not mix light and darkness. He separated all of these things because that's how you create order out of chaos. You take a bowl of M&Ms of all mixed up colors and you separate the brown ones over here and the blue ones over there, and now you know what you got. Okay, but you stick them all up and mix them all together, you have no idea. It's just a mush. It's a melange of nothingness. So, and He gives them very clear instructions. Be fruitful and multiply. Do not touch that tree. And what does the adversary do? He immediately seeks to inject some confusion. Is that really what was said? Because that's not clear to me. You see what's happening here? Father is separating to create order out of chaos, and the adversary is injecting chaos to create more chaos, trying to mix everything together. You can see it all the way through the Bible. Now, here's an interesting thing. We saw secular humanism rise up in about 1700 AD. That wasn't very long ago. So and I think you see hints of this in the book of the Revelation, where you're seeing, and this has always been mystical and interesting to me in chapter 17 and 18 of Revelation, where you've got a beast system and a harlot that is Babylon riding this beast system. Now, this is my idea, and you might have your own ideas, and I'm totally open to interpretation on this. I'm open to discussion. But I see a secular system, a secular humanist system, which is a beast. It is devoid of religion often. Like, let's say Russia, communist Russia, stuff like that. It tries to remove religious trappings from the system altogether. It becomes a religion of its own in a very real way, but it removes all religious trappings and says it's a secular, atheistic, humanist state. That is a beast system. Then you got this harlot who's riding the beast system. And to me, I see that as the religious systems of the earth. So you've got the adversary has two different systems at play because he's trying to cover all of his bases. You know what I'm saying? He's doing battle with our king on every front to whatever degree he can. He's got to suck in as many people as he can into his system. Now, here's the interesting thing that occurred to me as I was reading and discussing and thinking about this over the last 2 weeks. There are a couple of characteristics which really separate the kingdom of Yah versus the kingdom of the adversary. And I think that they are these. The kingdom of Yah is ruled by the Torah. It is the spoken will of our Father given to us in fairly plain language in a fairly short couple of books of the Torah, which have some very clear rules for how this kingdom works. and everything is organized and separated and nothing is mixed together. There's not a whole lot of confusion there. It's very clear. It's very simple. Simple stuff to understand. But then you've got this other religious system, lots of them, where what the adversary likes to do, again with the confusion and the mixing and the jumbled mess, is he likes to appeal to your sense of morality, because every soul has a conscience, and so he'll pluck from the Torah and from the New Testament those things which seem good to a man, right? And then he mixes in a little bit of nonsense, and then he mixes in a little bit of paganism, and then he mixes in a little bit of this, and what you end up with is a big old huge monstrous system that feels good, gives the ability to feel good about what you're doing, but it's fully corrupted. Now, there is truth and righteousness in every religious system on this planet. There are nuggets of truth in every single one of them. Does that make them right? No, it does not. So, that's one thing that characterizes the beast system. It takes things that are good and things that are bad and just mixes them all together so that everybody can feel warm and fuzzy. The second and the third thing that I'm going to relate to you here are a little more subtle and a little more dangerous. One thing that the adversary injects into his system are two delusions. One delusion is a delusion of control, and the other delusion is a delusion of escape. Delusions of control and escape. Remember that these are man-made religious systems. These are man-made political systems. The beast system and the Babylonian system, they're entirely made by man with the inspiration of the adversary, right? These are not inspired by Yah. They're man's interpretation inspired by the adversary and what feels right in a man's heart to just make his own system. That's what most religions are, is somebody who said, I mean, think about it. Muhammad, the original religion of Islam, that's essentially Catholicism with a little bit of Judaism mixed in, a little bit of Christianity mixed in. It's an abomination. It's a mixed up abomination. You think about Mormonism. It's just some guy who took some elements of Christianity, had some new revelations about some weird stuff going on in the Americas in ancient history, and we got some weird new angelic figures, and you can become a god, and man, you just created a whole new system. That's another abomination. So that gives you the delusion of control, that you have some say in how your religion affects you. But here's the point that you have to make, and I would make to you: you have no control, period. And you shouldn't want any. You should submit. You should accept, submit, and obey. You have no control. The only thing that you control is your reaction to what Yah says, period. You don't get to pick and choose what you want to do, what you don't want to do. You don't get to pick and choose how you want to worship. You don't get to pick and choose which commandments you want to keep. You don't get to pick and choose any of that stuff. You have zero control. This is Yah's kingdom, not yours. So if you want to be a member of his family, you got to follow those rules, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. He doesn't brook any argument. He does not allow for discussion. It's done. But the Babylonian system gives you all kinds of the sense of, I can go to any church I want. If I don't like this church on this corner, I can go to the church on that corner. It'll make me feel better. Maybe I like the worship better. Maybe I like the pastor better. Maybe I like the doctrine better. It's what feels good to you. The Babylonian system gives you a sense of control. It gives you a say in all of this stuff. That's a delusion. It's a false comfort. The final thing that the Babylonian system gives you is a false sense of, I can escape. How do they do that? They often, and you will know what I'm talking about when I say this, how do you often hear from the religious system how you can be saved. How can you be saved? Did you, when each of you has been saved for a long time, I'm assuming, and lots of people in here and online have been working with the Father for a lot of years, and when you came to the Lord, somebody probably said, save your life. Accept the free gift of the Savior, Messiah, Yeshua for your sins. Very true. Were you told how hard it would be? Were you told that you'd need to resist? Were you told that you might lose your job if you did what you should do? Were you told that you might end up losing your life? Were you told that you might no longer have a relationship with your wife? Were you told that you might no longer have a relationship with your family, your children? Were you told that you could no longer have a relationship with your friends? You might lose everything. I don't ever remember anybody telling me that. So I got a sense of, I can escape all the difficulty and I can escape having any trouble. It's all going to be a bed of roses for me. That's a sense of escape. Furthermore, you get this idea that is often preached in these type of religions where it's like, you can misinterpret a passage like in Corinthians where it says, don't worry, if God brings a challenge to you, He'll also make a way out. He'll make a way to escape the difficulty. That is not what the passage says. The passage says He will show you the door at the other end of the maze. He'll show you a way through the difficulty. See, Father is all about getting us through the difficulty, not out from under the difficulty. Has your life been easy? It's been nothing but trouble. But you know what's amazing is that there is peace, there is strength, there is joy, there is patience and peace and kindness and gentleness and encouragement from other people, even though it sucks. Right? Things are tough, and they're only getting tougher. But do you have a sense of peace about you in the midst of this difficulty? That's because Father is taking you through the difficulty, not showing you how to escape the difficulty. So I think that the Babylonian system gives you a false sense of control, it gives you a sense of choice, and it also gives you a sense of, I'm going to escape. Look at the pre-tribulation rapture doctrine. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. You're going to be sucked off the planet before anything bad happens. I think most people living right now are really beginning to question that doctrine. They're like, well, how bad is this going to have to get before He raptures me off the planet? Don't hear me say that there's not a rapture. I know there's a rapture. But also remember what I told you a couple of weeks back, that the tribulation period is for you. It's not happening to you. It's happening for you. It is for you to be rescued, to be saved, to be delivered, and to punish the enemies of your Father and your enemies, those who have persecuted you and mistreated you all of your life. So the kingdom of Babylon has these manifestations over time. We got the church and state Babylonian system with Babylon, Egypt, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. It doesn't matter. It's all the way down the line. You can mix them together. And then you got the secular state manifestation, which is fairly modern. It seeks to mix everything together and homogenize it. So think about this, and I'll wrap up with this because I know it's getting a little bit late, and I apologize for monopolizing the conversation. I'll open it up in just a moment, but I want you to think about this. Look at carefully the book of Revelation in chapter 17, verses 1 through 5. I'll repeat that. The book of Revelation, chapter 17, verses 1 through 5, and then verse 15. It's separated by a big chunk of paragraph in the middle. But what it essentially is telling you is that this shows that the harlot, Babylon, sits on many waters, right? And then in verse 15, it tells you that those waters are people and multitudes and nations and tongues. That's telling you that the Babylonian system encompasses the whole earth. We talked before about how people are wanting to escape this system. There's nowhere to run. You're not getting out of it. There is nowhere to go. Okay? You can't escape the system. You're in the midst of it. Now, you cannot escape it physically. You can only escape it spiritually. Now, that is not to say, as I mentioned earlier, that there are those who will be miraculously rescued, just like there has always been. Yah might tell you clearly and unequivocally, I want you to pack up your stuff, get in the car, and go, because I'm bringing destruction to this city. Has that ever happened before? Mm-hmm. We're told specifically to remember Lot, which is exactly what happened to him. That could happen to you. It could happen to you that Father sends his angels to tell you, hey, I want you to get on your backpack, grab, don't worry about you. You can only carry, I don't know how much you can carry, but my son went into the mountains, I think I told you, carrying a backpack that was 70 pounds. How long did you make it, Hayden? A couple miles?
Like 20 miles.
Not carrying that backpack, you didn't?
One day.
No. So I don't know about you, but very few of you, I'm guessing, have ever carried a backpack that's 70 pounds. You can't do it but for a mile. Okay, so when you flee, if you flee and the Father tells you get out of here, what are you going to be carrying? Well, what did they leave Egypt with? It was like that. They didn't have time to even let their bread rise. Okay, only with what they could carry. And how did Father feed them? With manna in the wilderness, with water from a rock. This is talking about miraculous escape. Okay, so that might happen. So is there an opportunity for literally, physically escaping? Yes, explicitly at the direction of Yah. But don't think, I'm going to go over there. That's a safe place to be. It's not. I'm going to go to that country. That's a safe place to be. It's not. The Babylonian system is everywhere. That's what the book of Revelation is telling us. This harlot sits on many waters, nations, peoples, languages, tongues. It's everywhere. You can't get away from it. Brett, would you hand that microphone to Jerry? And while it's on its way there, I'll just say that you can only escape spiritually, okay? And it will seek to conform you to it in those three ways: through idolatry and worship, sexual immorality, and eating unclean things and unclean worship. That's all Acts chapter 15 again. It's all the same stuff. Jerry.
The only time that I can think of where God says there'll be an escape is if you're in Jerusalem. He says, it's time to leave, boys.
Yeah.
Don't even look back. Don't take anything with you. Just go, and I will take you to a place where I will watch over you and keep you. And I think that's a fulfillment of the Philadelphia church.
Yeah. That's a good insight. I would tend to agree with that. And I think that it's likely that the disciples who heard Yeshua say that probably saved their own lives, many of them, only 35 years later when the Romans surrounded the city of Jerusalem. And now I don't know if some of them were wise enough to see in advance. Maybe they were. Said, okay, we see what's coming. We're getting the heck out of here. That's certainly possible. We don't know if some of them actually were visited by an angel and said, okay, you know what Messiah said? Now's the time. Go. After that, though, where's the opportunity? I'm not sure. You have to be paying attention. You got to be wise. You got to be, circumspect. You got to be listening to the Spirit. But here's the thing. If you're not keeping yourself pure from the Babylonian system and you're all mixed up in this worship, are you even going to hear from the Father? No. You're not. That's why I am telling you, keep yourself spiritually pure so that you can hear Father speaking. That's your best bet. I also am reminded what Yeshua said, those who seek to save their lives will lose it. So there's some really interesting things happening here. Angela?
Like a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, when we were walking, we would go for walks every evening. There's a lot of grasshoppers around. And one day, Alan was walking down the sidewalk, and this grasshopper landed. It was jumping around, and it landed on the sidewalk just as his shoe came down. He basically threw himself under Alan's shoe. And in that situation, Alan was the giant, and then you have a grasshopper. And this grasshopper, if he had just stayed still, he would have been fine. But because he saw the giant coming and jumped right on the spot where the giant's foot came down and squished him, and just that made me think of, that thing you said, like you're trying to run away from it and actually you end up running into it. Just that be still thing.
Yeah. Well, and you remember that thing that's in the Talmudic lore about, I think it was Nachshon, who was from the tribe of Ephraim, who got the idea to leave Egypt early. There was a bunch of people from the tribe of Ephraim who were like, they thought they could see the writing on the wall, and they decided to pack up from Egypt and leave and go to the Holy Land, and they all died, got destroyed by the people living in the Holy Land. Yeah, that was not a great idea because the timing wasn't right. So I want you to be mindful and careful regarding how you deal with the Babylonian system, okay? Because it's dangerous, and I think preparing yourself spiritually is your prime opportunity that anyone can do. But please don't hear me to say that Yah might be leading some of you to do something different, that there may be a physical aspect to it. I don't know. If you're hearing from Yah and he's telling you, hey, I want you to leave here, then tell me. If you're hearing from Yah and I'm not, and he's telling you you need to leave, why don't you let me know? Because I'd be interested to know that. And then I'll be interested to ask you, how am I going to test you to see whether you're a false prophet or not? That's something that you'd be concerned about, wouldn't it? If I saw some guy on YouTube or something saying, hey guys, I'm telling you that the wrath of Yah is coming this fall. The wrath of Yah is coming this fall. It's time to flee. It's time to throw on your backpack and grab up some bread and run. Are you going to test that prophet? You better. I certainly would. How? That's a great question. Deuteronomy 13, Deuteronomy 18. That's how you test a false prophet. And a prophet who comes on the YouTube and says, if I'm reading my cards, if I'm reading he's essentially saying if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. That's essentially what he's saying. If I'm anticipating this correctly, I'm seeing this nation over here doing that, and I'm seeing the prime minister of Israel's doing this, and I see this happening over here. Just reading the tea leaves, man. What?
It sounds like soothsaying.
It is soothsaying. It's someone who is trying to see. If someone's going to tell me it's time to flee Babylon, man, you better come to me and tell me, thus says Yah, because Yah is telling me it is time, and you better have a fleece on the ground that is dry on one side and wet on the other. You see what I'm saying? Because that's what Yah does. He proves his prophets. He says, if a prophet comes to you and says thus and such, and his prognostications don't come true, you can ignore him. In fact, kill him if you want. He's a false prophet. He's speaking presumptuously in my name. Okay? So that's a hard word, but you know how many people are out there on the internet and on YouTube making YouTube videos about how you need to do this, you need to do that and everything? And you know what sucks? A lot of these people have a proven track record of being wrong. And people are still listening to them in the thousands. They have a proven track record of saying, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, this could happen on that time of the year. This coming feast of Sukkot, you could see this start to happen. Didn't happen. Now, I didn't say it was going to happen. I said it could happen. That's not how a prophet works, dude. A prophet doesn't say it could happen, it may not happen, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. That is not how prophecy works, period. That's called clickbait, you guys. That's how YouTube monetizes the algorithm and sucks you in to watch more YouTube videos so the guy making them can get paid. And you know what? That dude making them is getting paid a lot of money. That's a lot of money that you can earn on YouTube if you know what sells like hotcakes, man?
Babylon, right?
What?
That's Babylon.
That is Babylon.
That's dwelling with the daughter.
There you go. That's a perfect idea. That is Babylon. That's one of the tentacles of Babylon. They're roping you into watching YouTube videos so you can make money for the guy who's making them. Ay, ay, ay.
I was thinking when Yeshua was
Wait. Give him a microphone. Where's the... Oh, sorry. Hayden, yes. Thank you, Brett.
I always think how Yeshua was questioned by the Pharisees about taxes.
Yes.
And he took the coin and said, whose image is on here.
That's right.
And that image is important because Babylon has money, and the key issue is if you're not part of Babylon, you're not going to be able to buy and sell.
That's what it talks about.
That's going to wake up a lot of people.
It certainly could. Because I know I've talked with you about that before, about the government trying to institute some kind of digital currency thing where, you know, God forbid there's a chip on the hand or on the forehead or something you can't buy and sell. The Book of Revelation talks about that explicitly. Am I taking some kind of digital currency that will not allow me to buy and sell? No, I am not. Especially if it comes in the forehead or the hand. Okay, no, I am not taking some kind of microchip in my body that's going to enable me to buy and sell. I will not do that just because I'm not that much of a fool. However, I'll tell you this. If that happens, what am I going to do? I'm going to trust in Yah. I'm going to trust in Yah. He's either going to feed me with ravens, give me water from a brook or a rock. I don't know what he's going to do. It's not my problem. He might just allow me to die. And this is something that I think we all need to really come to grips with, guys. No one's making out of here alive. No one is getting out of here alive. And my wife loves to say that, and I think it's true. Even if the rapture happens, that's just instant death. So no one's making out of here alive. If Father wants to save you, He will. There are many passages in the Torah, the prophets, the writings in the Book of Revelation that say, this portion goes to death, this portion goes to prison, this portion is rescued. How do you know which portion you are? You'll know later. All I can tell you is, try to be a vessel that is worthy of being rescued. Prepare yourself spiritually. That's the best you can possibly do. Can I hear an amen? Amen. Thank you. Tracy, I appreciate your patience, sister. I apologize for monopolizing the conversation. I just felt like I needed to get that off of my chest. Would anyone like does anyone have a statement, a question, a comment, a concern that they would like to make regarding our discussion of getting out of Babylon? Gracie, Hayden, come and get this microphone and hand it to Gracie for me. Sorry, I went from Bible study to preaching. I got a soapbox under my feet.
It just comes right down to it, in my heart, something that the Lord has worked on me off and on my whole life, because I was brought up in a Christian home that didn't teach the truth, that I didn't know it. But I had salvation because it's salvation.
Yeah.
But as we get into tighter and tighter and tighter things, and we just don't even know how everything is happening, you know, it's like we just got to keep what my mom used to say, short accounts with God.
Yes.
Don't let anything get by and think I'll deal with it later. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
You deal with it now, because he and his plan is that important for the ages, forever.
Yeah. I think that's great advice, and I think that, you know, a lot of our parents and grandparents told us the same thing. Keep a short leash on your sin. Keep short accounts with God. You know, I think what I would say to you, frankly, my best piece of advice comes from Matthew 5, or is it 6? I apologize. I always get these confused. Where he says, don't concern yourself with tomorrow. Today has enough trouble of its own. You know, you're showing your lack of trust by pontificating about tomorrow. Okay? Yes, you have to have some plans. You have to have some wisdom. It doesn't mean that you should have complete blinders on regarding the future. That's not what he's talking about. But I know plenty of people who are really concerned about what's happening in the future. In fact, they can barely even function in the today because they're so concerned about what's coming in the future. That is a sickness that is reaching epidemic proportions, especially in the Hebrew Roots movement, where a big emphasis is often on end times prophecy type stuff. It's scaring the crap out of people. Angela?
I think when it says don't participate so that you don't partake of her plagues, it's not just talking about like viruses and stuff like that. I think mental health that's a plague. And I think that anxiety he's talking about, that you see people suffering from anxiety to the point where they can't even function anymore. I think that is a type of plague. I think that just because we're in this modern world and we think it has to be like
a medical plague,
a medical thing, but I think the plagues are beyond that. And with like addiction, and you look at the homeless, that's a plague too. Yeah.
Madness. There's a lot of plagues striking the world now. Lou?
Show me the way, one day at
a time. That's right. Show me the way one day at a time. That's a great point. Anyone else? Comments, questions, or concerns? Hayden, you got a microphone?
I'm getting it.
You go, boy. He's moving a little slow.
There's a very good poem I found that helped. It's not the Bible, but it's very in line with it, I believe. Talking about living with the right mindset that will allow you to serve God and not fear. It's called The Exhortation of the Dawn. I can put it in Discord, but it's very good. It's my favorite.
I know that one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Delightful. That's it.